The mechanic spit on the ground right in front of Marcus Thompson's worn boots. "We don't need unemployed folks touching our machines," the man sneered, "especially not your kind." Marcus didn't flinch. He'd heard worse. But his 8-year-old daughter Lily was watching from the truck window, and that changed everything. What no one knew, not the wealthy ranch owner desperate for help, not the 5 mechanics who'd already failed, not the men who mocked him, was that this unemployed black single father was about to do something that would shake the entire region. Sometimes the person everyone dismisses becomes the one no one can forget. If this story moves you, comment the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey reaches. And subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Marcus Thompson had exactly $47 left to his name. He counted it again that morning, spreading the crumpled bills across the scratched kitchen table, while his daughter Lily ate her breakfast of scrambled eggs, the last 3 eggs in the refrigerator. "Daddy, why do you keep counting that money?" Marcus folded the bills quickly and tucked them into his pocket. "Just making sure it's all there, baby girl." "Is it?" "Every dollar." What he didn't tell her was that those $47 stood between them and the street. The rent was 3 months overdue. The landlord had stopped being patient 2 weeks ago. And the last mechanic's tool, Marcus owned a torque wrench his father had given him 20 years ago, had been sold last month to pay for Lily's school supplies. The phone rang. Marcus stared at it for 2 rings, 3 rings. Most calls these days were bill collectors or rejection notices. He'd applied to 37 places in the last 2 months. 37 numbers, some polite, some not. "You gonna answer it, Daddy?" He picked up. "Hello. Marcus, it's Henderson." Marcus closed his eyes. Mr. Henderson. The man who'd given him his first real job 15 years ago. The man whose workshop had closed 8 months ago, sending Marcus into this spiral of unemployment and desperation. "Mr. Henderson, how are you, sir?" "I'm fine, son. But that's not why I'm calling. I got something for you. Something important." Marcus walked to the window, keeping his voice low so Lily wouldn't hear. "I appreciate you thinking of me, but I've knocked on every door in this town. Nobody's hiring." "This isn't a door. This is a window God just opened. You listening?" "I'm listening. There's a ranch outside town, Hacienda San Miguel. Woman named Catherine Whitfield runs it. She's got a work truck that's been down for 3 weeks. 5 mechanics have tried to fix it, including 2 specialists from the city. Nobody could figure it out." Marcus felt something stir in his chest, something he hadn't felt in months. Interest. "What kind of truck?" 2015 Ford F350. Starts fine but chokes when you accelerate. They've thrown every diagnosis at it. Fuel system computer injectors. Last guy told her she needs a new engine. That's 100,000 pesos she doesn't want to spend. And she's willing to let someone like me take a look. There was a pause on the line. Marcus knew what that pause meant. "She doesn't know much about you yet," Mr. Henderson said carefully. "I told her I knew someone with a gift, someone who could hear what machines were saying. I didn't tell her that I'm black, that I'm unemployed, that I'm a single father 1 week away from being homeless. I told her you were the best mechanic I ever trained. That's what matters, Marcus. That's the only thing that should matter." Marcus looked back at Lily, who was drawing something on a napkin with a crayon she'd found in her backpack. She looked up and smiled at him. That smile that reminded him so much of her mother. That smile that made every hard day worth fighting through. "When does she need me there?" "Today. Now if possible. I already borrowed tools from my compadre Roberto. They're sitting on my porch waiting for you." "Mr. Henderson, I don't know how to thank—" "Don't thank me yet. This woman's been burned 5 times. She's not going to trust easy. But Marcus—" The old man's voice softened. "This is your shot. Maybe your last one for a while. Don't waste it." An hour later, Marcus walked along the dirt road toward Hacienda San Miguel, with a borrowed toolbox cutting into his shoulder and the midday sun beating down on his neck. He'd left Lily with Mrs. Gonzalez next door, promising to be back before dinner. The old woman had looked at him with those knowing eyes, the eyes of someone who understood what it meant to be down to your last hope. "You go fix that truck, mijo," she'd said. "And you come back with good news." The hacienda gates appeared in the distance, rising up like something from another century, iron and stone and old money. The kind of place Marcus had only ever seen from the outside. A man in a sweat-stained work shirt stood at the entrance. Mid-60s weathered face hands that had clearly known decades of hard labor. "You the mechanic Henderson sent?" "Yes, sir. Marcus Thompson." The man looked him up and down. Not with hostility, but with the careful assessment of someone who'd learned to read people quickly. "I'm Walter, foreman here for 22 years. He unlocked the gate and swung it open. "I'll warn you now, Mrs. Whitfield is past frustrated. 5 mechanics have come through here. 5 mechanics have left with money in their pockets and excuses on their lips." They started walking toward the main work area. "What kind of excuses?" Marcus asked. "The usual. Needs a new engine. Too complicated. Computer problems. One guy actually said the truck was cursed." Walter shook his head. "Charged her 2,000 pesos to tell her the truck was cursed. Can you believe that? I've heard worse." Walter stopped walking and turned to face Marcus directly. "There's something else you should know." "I'm listening." 2 of those mechanics, after they couldn't fix it, they made comments about how someone must have messed with the truck before them, someone who didn't know what they were doing. Walter's jaw tightened. When Mrs. Whitfield asked what they meant, one of them said the damage looked like the work of someone who'd learned mechanics in a prison yard. Marcus felt his stomach clench. "They said that." "They did. And they didn't even know you were coming. They were just looking for someone to blame for their own failure." Walter started walking again. "I'm telling you this because I don't want you to be blindsided. Some people around here, they see a man like you, and they've already decided what you are before you open your mouth." "I appreciate the warning." "Don't appreciate it yet. Just fix the truck." She was standing next to the F350 when they rounded the corner of the equipment shed. Arms crossed, spine straight, green eyes sharp enough to cut glass. Catherine Whitfield looked exactly like what she was, a woman who'd learned to be hard because the world had given her no other choice. "Mrs. Whitfield," Walter called out. "This is the mechanic Henderson recommended, Marcus Thompson." She didn't move toward him, didn't extend a hand, just studied him with an expression that revealed nothing. "Mr. Thompson." Her voice was controlled, measured. "I'll be direct with you because I don't have the energy for anything else. 5 mechanics have stood where you're standing. 5 mechanics have told me they knew exactly what was wrong. And 5 mechanics were wrong." "I understand, ma'am." "Do you? Because I'm not sure you do." She took 2 steps closer. "That truck is the backbone of this operation. Without it, I can't transport harvest. I can't move cattle to market. I can't bring in supplies. Every day it sits there broken is money bleeding out of this ranch, money that pays the salaries of 15 families who depend on me. How long has it been down? 3 weeks. 3 weeks of delays and excuses and promises that turned to nothing." Her eyes narrowed. "So before we go any further, I need to know something. Are you going to waste my time like the others?" Marcus met her gaze directly. In his experience, people who'd been burned expected you to look away, to make excuses, to soft pedal. He'd never been good at any of that. "Ma'am, I don't know yet if I can fix your truck. Anyone who tells you they can fix something before they've even looked at it is either lying or a fool. I'm neither." Something shifted in her expression. Surprise, maybe, or the beginning of respect. "Then what can you tell me?" "I can tell you, I'll listen to what your truck is saying. Really listen. And if I figure out what's wrong, I'll explain it to you in plain language, so you understand exactly what the problem is and exactly what it'll take to fix it. And if I can't figure it out..." He paused. "I'll tell you that too. Straight. No excuses." Catherine studied him for a long moment. Henderson said you were good. Mr. Henderson is a kind man. He also said you've been out of work for 8 months. There it was. The thing people always circled back to. The gap in his employment. The question beneath the question. If you're so good, why won't anyone hire you? That's correct, ma'am. Why? Marcus could have given her the easy answer. The economy. The workshop closing. Bad timing. All of it true, and none of it the whole truth. But something about this woman, her directness, her refusal to pretend, made him want to respond in kind. The shop I worked at for 15 years closed down. Since then I've applied to every garage, every dealership, every repair shop in the region. He kept his voice steady. Most of them took one look at me and found a reason to say no. Some of them didn't even try to find a reason. They just said no. Catherine didn't look away, didn't offer sympathy or platitudes. And yet you're still here. I have a daughter, 8 years old. Her mother passed 3 years ago. So yes, ma'am, I'm still here. Because she needs me to be. For the first time, something softened in Catherine's face. Just slightly. Just enough for Marcus to see that beneath the hard exterior was someone who understood what it meant to keep going when everything in you wanted to stop. Show me what you can do, Mr. Thompson. Marcus set the borrowed toolbox on the ground and approached the truck like a surgeon approaching an operating table. Can you start it for me, ma'am? Catherine climbed into the cab and turned the key. The engine came to life, smooth, steady. Nothing obviously wrong. Now give it a little gas. Gentle. She pressed the accelerator. The engine responded, then stuttered, then nearly died before catching itself again. Harder now. The stutter became a choke. The truck shook like it was fighting against itself. Okay, let it idle. Catherine kept the engine running while Marcus stood at the front of the truck with his eyes closed. What's he doing? Tyler, the young worker who'd been watching from near the shed, whispered to Walter. Quiet, Walter said. He's listening. Marcus was more than listening. He was feeling. Every vibration, every hesitation, every micro-adjustment the engine made as it tried to compensate for something wrong. He'd learned this from his father, who'd learned it from his father before him. The old mechanics, the ones who'd worked before computers and diagnostic machines, they knew that every engine had a voice. You just had to learn how to hear it. Rev it again. Marcus said, his eyes still closed. Then drop back to idle. Catherine complied. The engine screamed, stuttered, settled. Once more. This time hold the acceleration for 10 seconds. She did. At the 7-second mark, Marcus opened his eyes. You can shut it off now. Catherine turned the key and climbed out of the cab. Tyler and Walter had moved closer, drawn by curiosity. Well? Catherine asked. What's your diagnosis? Marcus walked around to the passenger side of the truck, popped the hood, and leaned over the engine. His hands moved across components testing connections, feeling for heat variations. The other mechanics who looked at this, they told you fuel system, right? Among other things. They weren't completely wrong. The symptoms point to fuel delivery, but they were looking in the wrong place. He pointed to a component nestled among the engine's complexity. This is your fuel pressure regulator. It controls how much pressure the fuel system maintains. When it's working right, your engine gets consistent fuel delivery. When it's not, the engine chokes. Exactly. But here's the thing, the regulator probably tested fine when they checked it. Pressure readings would have looked normal at idle. Marcus wiped his hands on his jeans. The problem is intermittent. It only fails under acceleration when demand spikes. That's why no one caught it. Catherine leaned in, studying the component he'd indicated. How can you be sure? I can't. Not 100%. Not until I test it. He met her eyes. But I can prove it without costing you anything. How? I create a temporary bypass. Route the fuel around the regulator. If the truck runs perfectly with the bypass, we'll know that's the problem. If it doesn't, he shrugged. Then I was wrong and I walk away. No charge. And if you're right, then you're looking at about 1,500 pesos for a new regulator, plus labor, maybe 3 hours of work total. Catherine stared at him. 1,500 pesos. The last mechanic told me I needed a new engine for 100,000. The last mechanic was wrong. And you're sure you're not? Marcus pulled the rag from his pocket and wiped the grease from his fingers. Mrs. Whitfield, I've been wrong before. Every honest mechanic has. But I've never lied to a customer about what I found, and I've never charged for work I didn't do. You give me until tomorrow afternoon. If I'm wrong, you lose nothing but time. If I'm right, I save 98,000 pesos. Yes, ma'am. Catherine looked at Walter, who gave her a small nod. She looked at the truck, then back at Marcus. Tomorrow afternoon, she said. Don't make me regret this. Marcus worked until the sun went down. Walter brought him water. Tyler brought him food. Both of them stayed to watch, asking questions that Marcus answered patiently while his hands never stopped moving. How'd you know it was the regulator? Tyler asked at one point. I didn't know. Not for certain. But when you listen to an engine long enough, you start to hear patterns. That stutter at acceleration, it wasn't random. It came at the exact same point every time. That means something consistent is failing. The regulator made the most sense. The other mechanics had fancy diagnostic computers, Walter said. You just listened. Computers are tools, good tools, but they can only tell you what sensors detect. Sometimes the problem is in a place sensors don't reach. Marcus tightened a connection and leaned back. My father taught me that. He worked 40 years without a single computer. Fixed everything from tractors to race cars. When I asked him how he said engines were like people, they tell you what's wrong if you care enough to pay attention. By 9 o'clock the bypass was complete, but it was too dark to do a proper test, and Marcus needed daylight to see if any other issues emerged. He packed up the borrowed tools and found Walter waiting with a pickup truck. Mrs. Whitfield said I should drive you home. That's kind of her. She's not as hard as she seems. Walter started the truck and pulled out toward the gate. Her husband died 3 years ago. Left her with this ranch and a mountain of debt. Half the men in this region told her to sell. Said a woman couldn't run an operation like this alone. She told every single one of them to go to hell. Marcus smiled slightly. I can imagine. She's been burned a lot, Marcus. Not just by mechanics, by people she trusted. Partners who cheated her. Workers who stole from her. After a while you start to see everyone as a potential threat. I understand that. Walter glanced at him. I think you do. I think you understand it more than most. They drove in silence for a while. Then Walter said, Whatever happens tomorrow, whether the truck works or not, I want you to know something. You're the first mechanic who actually explained what was wrong in words I could understand. The others talked down to us like we were stupid. You didn't. Talking down to people never made anyone smarter. No, it didn't. Mrs. Gonzalez was asleep on the couch when Marcus got home. Lily curled up beside her with a book still open on her chest. He lifted his daughter gently, carried her to her small bed, and tucked the blanket around her. She stirred, but didn't wake. Daddy. Shh. Go back to sleep, baby girl. Did you fix the truck? Not yet. Tomorrow. She smiled with her eyes still closed. You'll fix it. You fix everything. Marcus kissed her forehead and turned off the light. In the kitchen, he sat at the same table where he'd counted those $47 that morning. He was too tired to eat, too wired to sleep. Tomorrow would determine everything. Not just the truck. Not just this job. But whether he could keep his promise to his wife, the promise he'd made as she lay dying in that hospital bed. Take care of our girl, she'd whispered. Don't let her see you give up. Ever. He hadn't. Not once. Not when the bills piled up. Not when the rejections came. Not when men looked at him with disgust or pity or both. But he was close. God, he was close. $47. 3 months behind on rent. Borrowed tools. A daughter who believed he could fix anything. Tomorrow, he'd find out if she was right. Morning came too fast, and not fast enough. Marcus was at the hacienda gates by 6 a.m., 2 hours before he'd agreed to meet Catherine. He couldn't wait any longer. The test had to happen. The answer had to come. Walter was already there, as if he'd expected this. Couldn't sleep either, huh? No, sir. Come on, I've got coffee brewing. They walked to the work area together. The truck sat where Marcus had left it, hood still propped open, bypass complete. You want to test it now? Walter asked. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything first. For the next 90 minutes, Marcus went over every inch of his work, checked every connection, verified every pathway. He'd learned long ago that rushing led to mistakes, and mistakes in this business could be catastrophic. At 7:30, Tyler arrived. At 8, Catherine appeared carrying 2 cups of coffee. Walter said you've been here since 6. Yes, ma'am. Anxious. Determined. She handed him one of the cups. Then let's find out if you're right. Marcus climbed into the truck's cab while the others gathered behind. His hand rested on the key for a moment. This was it. Everything came down to this. He turned the key. The engine roared to life. Give it gas, Catherine called. He pressed the accelerator. The engine responded smoothly, powerfully, without hesitation. More. He floored it. The F-350 screamed like it had been waiting years for someone to set it free. Hold it there. 10 seconds, 20, 30. The engine held steady, strong, alive. Marcus let off the gas and let the truck idle. Perfect. He climbed out of the cab and faced Catherine. Her expression had changed completely. The hardness was still there, but now it was joined by something else. Wonder. It works, she said quietly. Yes, ma'am, it does. 3 weeks, 5 mechanics, thousands of pesos in diagnostic fees. She shook her head slowly. And you fixed it in 1 day with borrowed tools. The tools aren't what matters, Mrs. Whitfield. Understanding the problem is what matters. The tools just help you apply the solution. Tyler let out a whoop and slapped Walter on the back. Walter smiled a real smile, the first one Marcus had seen from him. But Catherine just stood there studying Marcus with those sharp green eyes. Mr. Thompson, she said finally, I think we need to talk. Catherine led Marcus toward the main house without another word. He followed, toolbox still in hand, his heart pounding with a mixture of hope and wariness. He'd learned long ago not to celebrate too early. The truck was fixed, yes. But he'd seen too many opportunities slip away at the last moment to trust that anything was certain. They entered through a side door and walked down a hallway lined with photographs. Marcus caught glimpses of the hacienda through the years, different eras, different faces, but always the same land stretching toward the horizon. Catherine's office was functional rather than fancy. A heavy wooden desk dominated the room, covered with papers and ledgers that spoke of a business being run by someone who paid attention to every detail. Sit, she said, gesturing to a leather chair across from her desk. Marcus sat. The chair was more comfortable than anything in his rented room. Catherine poured 2 glasses of water from a pitcher on her desk and handed one to him. Then she settled into her own chair and studied him with that direct gaze he was beginning to recognize as her default expression. I'm going to ask you something and I want an honest answer. I don't give any other kind. Why is a mechanic with your skills unemployed? The question hit Marcus like a fist to the chest. He'd expected it. He always expected it, but that didn't make it easier. You want the easy answer or the real one? The real one. Marcus took a drink of water, gathering his thoughts. The shop where I worked for 15 years closed down 8 months ago. Owner couldn't compete with the big franchises anymore. Since then, I've applied everywhere. Garages, dealerships, factories, anywhere that needed someone who could work with their hands. And And most of them looked at me and saw what they wanted to see. A black man in a town that doesn't have many of us. An unemployed father with a gap in his work history. Someone who might cause problems or make their other employees uncomfortable. Catherine didn't flinch, didn't offer sympathy, just listened. A few of them gave me a chance to interview, but something always went wrong. They'd find someone else, or the position would suddenly be filled, or they'd call my references and decide I wasn't the right fit. Marcus set down his water glass. After a while, you start to understand. The door isn't just closed. It was never really open. And yet, you kept trying. I have a daughter. You mentioned that. 8 years old. Lily. Her mother died 3 years ago. Cancer. Since then, it's just been the two of us. Marcus's voice stayed steady, but the effort it took was immense. I promised my wife I'd take care of our girl. I promised I'd never let Lily see me give up. So I keep trying. Every day. Even when every door slams in my face. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, still direct, but with something warmer underneath. My husband died 3 years ago too. Heart attack. No warning. One day he was here running this ranch making plans for the future. The next day he was gone. I'm sorry. Don't be. I've had 3 years to make peace with it. She leaned forward slightly. After he died, half the men in this region told me to sell. Said a woman couldn't handle an operation this size. Said I'd run it into the ground within a year. But you didn't. No, I didn't. Because I don't know how to give up either. She held his gaze. I think that's something we have in common, Mr. Thompson. Marcus said nothing. He sensed she was building toward something, and he'd learned that sometimes the best thing to do was wait. I have a proposal for you, Catherine said. But first, I need you to understand the full situation here. She stood and walked to a window that looked out over the hacienda's work area. This ranch isn't just fields and cattle. We have 8 vehicles, pickups, tractors, a harvester, cargo trucks. In the last 6 months, I've spent over 60,000 pesos on repairs and maintenance. And most of the time, the problems come back because the mechanics from town don't understand what our equipment goes through out here. Different conditions require different approaches. Exactly. She turned to face him. What I need isn't someone to fix things when they break. I need someone to keep them from breaking in the first place. Someone who can maintain our entire fleet, train my workers to spot problems early, and save me from bleeding money on mechanics who don't know what they're doing. Marcus felt his pulse quicken, but he kept his expression neutral. What exactly are you offering? Full-time position as resident mechanic. 15,000 pesos monthly, plus a 5,000 peso bonus if vehicle availability stays above 90%. Medical coverage. 2 weeks paid vacation. She paused. And housing on the property, for you and your daughter. For a moment, Marcus couldn't breathe. 15,000 pesos a month was more than he'd made at his best job. Housing meant no more rent, no more landlord threats, no more counting dollars, and wondering if this week would be the one where everything fell apart. You're serious, he said. I don't joke about business, Mr. Thompson. I watched you work yesterday and today. You didn't just fix the truck, you explained everything you were doing so Walter and Tyler could understand. You treated them like intelligent people instead of obstacles to work around. Do you know how rare that is? It's just how I was taught. Then you were taught well. Catherine returned to her desk and sat down. I'm offering you a chance to build something here. A real workshop, professional equipment, the resources to do your job right. In return, I expect loyalty, hard work, and results. Marcus thought about Lily, about the tiny room they shared, about the $47 that was supposed to last until his next opportunity, an opportunity that might never have come. I have one condition, he said. Catherine raised an eyebrow. You're negotiating already. Not negotiating, requesting. He leaned forward. Let me train some of your workers in basic maintenance. Tyler and Walter showed real interest while I was working. If I can teach them to spot problems early and handle simple repairs, it'll benefit the whole operation. You won't be dependent on just one person, me, and they'll feel more invested in keeping the equipment running. Catherine studied him for a long moment. Then, for the first time since he'd met her, she smiled. Mr. Thompson, I think I made the right decision. She extended her hand across the desk. Marcus shook it. When can you start? How about right now? The smile widened. I was hoping you'd say that. 2 hours later, Marcus stood in the doorway of what would become his workshop. The space was rough, a storage building that had been half forgotten over the years, but he could see the potential. Good bones, room to grow, a place where he could build something real. Tyler appeared beside him, practically vibrating with excitement. Mrs. Whitfield said I should help you get set up, whatever you need. You really want to learn this stuff? More than anything. My dad was a mechanic too back in Texas before we moved here. He died when I was 12. Never got to teach me much. Tyler's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. I've been trying to learn on my own, but it's not the same. Marcus looked at the young man, early 20s, eager, hungry to prove himself. He saw himself at that age, before life had knocked him down so many times. Then let's get to work. They spent the rest of the day cleaning out the space, taking inventory of what was there, and making lists of what was needed. Marcus discovered that Tyler was a quick learner, with good instincts. He just needed guidance and confidence. As the sun began to set, Walter found them organizing a shelf of old parts. Mrs. Whitfield sent me to tell you dinner's ready, both of you. She doesn't have to feed us, Marcus said. She knows that. She wants to. Walter looked around the workshop in progress. You've made a lot of progress already. We're just getting started. Walter nodded slowly. I've worked here for 22 years. Seen a lot of people come and go. Most of them were all talk. He met Marcus's eyes. You're not all talk. No, sir, I'm not. That night, Marcus drove back to town to collect Lily and their belongings. It wasn't much clothes, a few books, some photographs of her mother. Everything they owned fit in 2 suitcases and a cardboard box. Lily bounced on the bed in their new room at the hacienda, her eyes wide with wonder. This is really ours. It's really ours, baby girl. And you have a job. A real job. A real job. She threw her arms around his neck and squeezed tight. I knew you'd fix everything, Daddy. I knew it. Marcus held his daughter and let himself feel just for a moment something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. The days that followed blurred together in a whirlwind of activity. Catherine hadn't exaggerated about the state of the hacienda's fleet. Years of neglected maintenance had left most of the vehicles operating well below their potential. But instead of being overwhelmed, Marcus felt energized. This was what he was meant to do. He started with a complete assessment of every vehicle. Not just what was broken, but what was wearing down, what needed adjustment, what could be improved. Tyler shadowed him constantly, asking questions that showed he was actually thinking about what he was learning. Why do you check the transmission fluid when the problem is with the brakes? Tyler asked one afternoon. Because everything in a vehicle is connected, Marcus explained, wiping his hands on a rag. The transmission, the engine, the brakes, they all affect each other. A problem in one system can cause symptoms in another. If you only look at the obvious thing, you might miss the real cause. Like that truck, the other mechanics saw fuel system problems because that's where the symptoms were. Exactly. But the actual failure was in the regulator, which affected how fuel was delivered under load. Different location, same result. Tyler nodded, filing the information away. My dad used to say something like that. He said a good mechanic doesn't just fix cars, he understands them. Your dad was right. On his 5th day at the hacienda, Marcus met Samuel, a man in his 50s who'd worked the ranch for 15 years. Samuel was quieter than Tyler, more reserved, but he'd sought Marcus out specifically. "I heard you're teaching Tyler about engines," Samuel said. "I'm trying. Would you teach me too?" Marcus set down the wrench he'd been holding. "You want to learn mechanics? I've been around these machines my whole working life, driven them, loaded them, watched them break down." Samuel's voice was steady but earnest. "I never understood how they actually worked. Always seemed like magic. But the way Tyler talks about what you're teaching him, it doesn't sound like magic anymore. It sounds like something a person can learn." "It is something a person can learn. Anyone with patience and the willingness to pay attention can learn it." "Then I'm willing." Marcus found himself smiling. "Monday afternoons. We'll start with basic engine theory." The following week, Catherine called Marcus to her office with news that surprised him. "Walter's daughter wants to join your training sessions." Walter has a daughter, Maya. She's 22, studying mechanical engineering at the Technical Institute in the city. But she's frustrated with the program, says it's all theory and no practice. When Walter told her what you've been teaching Tyler and Samuel, she asked if she could learn too. "An engineering student wants to learn from me. She wants to learn the practical side, the things they don't teach in classrooms." Catherine leaned back in her chair. "I think it's a good idea. The more people here who understand these machines, the better off we all are." Marcus thought about it. Teaching Tyler and Samuel was one thing. They were workers with practical experience, but no formal training. Maya was different. She had the theory. What she lacked was the hands-on understanding that only came from actually working with engines. "Send her to the workshop tomorrow," he said. "We'll see what she's got." Maya arrived at 7 in the morning, an hour before Marcus had expected her. She was tall, with her father's serious eyes and a notebook already in hand. "Mr. Thompson, I'm Maya. Thank you for letting me join your sessions." "Don't thank me yet. You might hate it." She smiled slightly. "My professors say I ask too many questions. Fair warning." Questions are how you learn. The only stupid question is the one you don't ask because you're afraid of looking stupid. That first day, Marcus watched Maya as much as he taught her. She was sharp, sharper than her professors probably gave her credit for. But she'd been trained to think in abstractions, formulas, theoretical models. What she needed was to feel how an engine actually behaved. "Close your eyes," Marcus said, standing her next to a running tractor. "Excuse me. Close your eyes. Listen." She did. He let the tractor idle for a minute, then increased the throttle slightly. What changed? The sound got louder. What else? She frowned, concentrating. The pitch shifted. Higher. Good. What else? The vibration through the ground. It's faster now. More intense. Marcus nodded, even though she couldn't see it. "You're learning to read what the engine is telling you. Instruments can give you numbers, but your senses can give you context. A good mechanic uses both." Maya opened her eyes, and there was something different in her expression. The look of someone who'd just understood something that had been eluding them. "They don't teach this in school. They can't. This isn't something you learn from books. It's something you learn from doing." "Then, I want to keep doing." Over the next several weeks, Marcus developed a routine that filled his days completely. Mornings were for hands-on maintenance, working through his assessment list, repairing what needed repairing, adjusting what needed adjusting. Afternoons were for teaching. Tyler, Samuel, and Maya gathered in the workshop, while Marcus walked them through everything from basic engine theory to advanced diagnostic techniques. The transformation in his students was remarkable. Tyler, who'd started knowing almost nothing, could now perform routine maintenance on any vehicle in the fleet. Samuel, despite his age, absorbed information with the dedication of a man who'd waited decades for this opportunity. And Maya was something special. She bridged the gap between theory and practice in ways that impressed even Marcus. "You know what I've realized?" Maya said one afternoon, elbow deep in a transmission she was learning to rebuild. "My professors talk about machines like they're puzzles to be solved. You talk about them like they're patients to be healed." Marcus considered this. Maybe that's the difference between engineering and mechanics. Engineers design machines. Mechanics keep them alive. I think I want to do both. Then you'll need to understand both. The theory tells you what should happen. The practice tells you what actually happens. A good engineer or a good mechanic knows that those aren't always the same thing. Lily had adjusted to their new life with the resilience that only children seem to possess. She'd started at the local school, made friends quickly, and had adopted the hacienda's workers as an extended family. Walter had become her unofficial grandfather, teaching her about horses and letting her feed the chickens every morning. Tyler let her help with simple tasks in the workshop, carefully supervised. Even Catherine had softened around her, occasionally inviting her to the main house for cookies and conversation. One evening, as Marcus walked Lily back to their quarters after dinner, she looked up at him with those serious eyes that reminded him so much of her mother. "Daddy, are we going to stay here forever?" "I don't know about forever, baby girl, but we're going to stay for a good long while." "I hope it's forever. I like it here. The people are nice." Marcus squeezed her hand. "They are nice, aren't they? Mrs. Whitfield is my favorite. She seems strict, but she's actually really kind. She just doesn't want people to know it." "How do you figure that?" "Because she always makes sure I have enough cookies, even when she pretends there aren't any left. And she asks me about school every time she sees me, and she actually listens when I answer." Lily skipped a few steps. "She's like you, Daddy. Hard on the outside because life made her that way. Soft on the inside because that's who she really is." Marcus stared at his daughter, amazed as always by her perception. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You just don't always notice because you're busy fixing things." "Well, I'm noticing now." "Good." She smiled up at him. "I notice things too, like how Mrs. Whitfield looks at you when she thinks nobody's watching." "What do you mean?" "She looks at you like you're important, like she's glad you're here." Lily shrugged with the casual wisdom of an 8-year-old. "I think she was lonely before we came." That night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Marcus sat on the small porch of their quarters and thought about what his daughter had said. He'd been so focused on the work on proving himself on building something stable for Lily that he hadn't paid attention to much else. But now that he thought about it, he realized Catherine had been present for almost every major milestone of the past few weeks. She'd visited the workshop to see his progress. She'd sat in on some of his teaching sessions. She'd asked questions about his methods, his plans, his vision for the maintenance program. At first, he'd assumed she was just being a diligent owner, checking on her investment. But maybe there was more to it than that. Or maybe he was reading too much into things. It wouldn't be the first time. The next morning, Marcus presented Catherine with his completed assessment report, 15 pages documenting the status of every vehicle recommended, repairs, a preventive maintenance schedule, and a projected budget for the coming year. Catherine read through it carefully, her expression unreadable. Marcus waited, trying not to fidget like a schoolboy awaiting a grade. Finally, she looked up. "This is impressive." "Thank you, ma'am." "Catherine." He blinked. "Excuse me. You've been here 3 weeks. You've fixed more vehicles than the last 5 mechanics combined. You're training my workers to be better at their jobs. And my foreman's daughter thinks you're the best teacher she's ever had." She set the report on her desk. "I think you've earned the right to call me by my first name." "All right. Catherine." She smiled a real smile, not the tight professional one she usually wore. "The initial investment to implement all your recommendations is 45,000 pesos. How confident are you in the return projections?" "Very confident. With proper preventive maintenance, your annual repair costs should drop from 60,000 to less than 15. And vehicle availability should stay above 95% all year." "That would be remarkable." "That's what happens when you take care of machines instead of just fixing them when they break." Catherine stood and walked to the window, her thinking position Marcus had noticed. "Do you know what I appreciate most about you, Marcus?" He waited. "You don't just solve problems. You prevent them. You don't just do your job. You make everyone around you better at theirs." She turned to face him. "In 3 weeks, you've done more for this ranch than the last 3 years of expensive consultants and specialists." "I just did what needed doing." "No, you did more than that." She walked back to her desk but didn't sit. "I'm going to approve your full maintenance program. Every recommendation, every purchase. Whatever you need to keep this operation running at peak efficiency." "Thank you. I won't let you down." "I know you won't." She held his gaze for a moment longer than necessary. "That's why I trust you." As Marcus left her office, he felt something he hadn't felt since before his wife died. A sense of possibility. A feeling that maybe after everything, life was finally turning in his direction. He didn't know that in less than a week, everything he'd built would be put to the ultimate test. That a crisis was coming that would demand every ounce of skill and courage he possessed. And that the decisions he made in the hours that followed would determine not just his future, but the futures of everyone who'd come to depend on him. For now, though, he walked back to his workshop with a lighter step than he'd had in years. Lily was thriving. His work was appreciated. His students were growing. For the first time in a very long time, Marcus Thompson allowed himself to believe that good things could last. The morning started like any other. Marcus was in the workshop by 6 going over the maintenance schedule for the week, while Tyler prepped the tools they'd need for a routine tractor service. Maya had arrived early, too eager to observe the process from start to finish. "You know what I've been thinking about," Tyler said, handing Marcus a socket wrench. "How different everything feels now compared to 2 months ago." "Different how?" "Before you came, when something broke down, everyone panicked. Mrs. Whitfield would be on the phone for hours trying to find someone to fix it. Now—" Tyler shrugged. "Now we just handle it. Like it's no big deal." "It's not no big deal," Marcus corrected. "It's just that we're prepared. Preparation turns emergencies into inconveniences." Maya looked up from her notebook. "My professor said something similar last week. He said the best engineers are the ones who anticipate problems before they happen." "Smart man." "I told him I learned that from you. He asked if you'd ever consider guest lecturing at the Institute." Marcus laughed. "Me. Standing in front of college students, they'd run me out of there in 10 minutes. "I don't think so. You're a better teacher than most of my professors." Before Marcus could respond, the workshop door flew open. Catherine stood in the doorway, and the expression on her face stopped every conversation cold. "Marcus, we have a problem." He'd never heard her voice shake before, not even slightly, but it was shaking now. "What happened?" "The harvester. It broke down in the north field, right in the middle of the corn harvest." Marcus set down his tools. "When?" "This morning. Walter tried to start the cutting system and the whole machine shut down. He's been trying to get it running for 2 hours. Nothing works." "I'll head out there now." "There's more." Catherine's hands were clenched at her sides. "If we don't get that harvester running in the next 48 hours, we lose the entire corn crop. That's 200,000 pesos, 40% of our annual income." Tyler made a small sound of dismay. Maya's face went pale. "Have you called the dealer?" Marcus asked. "First thing I did. The nearest certified technician is in Guadalajara. He can't get here until Monday." "That's 5 days away." "I know." Catherine's voice cracked slightly. "Marcus, I've called everyone I can think of. Every mechanic, every dealer, every specialist in the region. Nobody can come. It's peak harvest season. Everyone is either booked or too far away." Marcus grabbed his diagnostic kit and headed for the door. "Show me." The drive to the north field took 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. Catherine sat rigid in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead. Marcus could feel the tension radiating off her like heat. "How bad is it going to be?" she finally asked. "Tell me the truth." "I don't know yet. I haven't seen it." "But if you had to guess?" Marcus kept his eyes on the dirt road ahead. Combine harvesters are complicated machines. Hydraulic systems, electronic controls, mechanical components all working together. If one major system fails, it can take down everything else. That's not making me feel better. I'm not trying to make you feel better. I'm trying to prepare you for what we might be facing. When they arrived at the field, Marcus understood immediately why Catherine was so worried. The harvester, a massive John Deere S670 worth over 2 million pesos, sat motionless in the middle of acres of ripe corn. Walter stood beside it, his face drawn with frustration and fear. "Thank God you're here," Walter said as Marcus approached. "I've tried everything I can think of. The engine runs fine, but the moment I engage the harvesting system, the whole thing shuts down. Show me." Walter climbed into the cab and started the engine. It roared to life, strong and healthy. Then he flipped the switch to engage the cutting mechanism. The harvester shuddered once and went completely dead. "See?" Walter's voice was tight with despair. "It's like something's killing the power the moment the system activates." Marcus walked slowly around the machine, his mind already racing through possibilities. This wasn't like the truck. This was exponentially more complex, a mobile factory with dozens of interconnected systems, any one of which could be causing the failure. "I need time," he said, "and I need Tyler and Maya out here with me." "I'll send them," Catherine said, "and I need you to understand something." Marcus turned to face her directly. "I'm going to do everything I can, but I'm not going to promise you I can fix this. I've never worked on this specific model before. I'm going into this blind." Catherine held his gaze. "I trust you." "You might be trusting the wrong person." "No." Her voice was firm despite everything. "I'm not." She left with the ranch pickup to get Tyler and Maya. Marcus turned back to the harvester and took a deep breath. "All right," he said quietly, more to himself than to Walter. "Talk to me. Tell me what's wrong." For the next 4 hours, Marcus methodically worked his way through every system he could access. Tyler and Maya arrived within the hour, and he put them to work immediately. Tyler testing electrical connections. Maya documenting readings and observations. The sun climbed higher. The heat became oppressive. Sweat soaked through Marcus's shirt as he crawled over and under and through the massive machine, searching for the source of the failure. "The electrical system checks out," Tyler reported. "All connections are solid. No shorts that I can find." "Hydraulic pressure is within normal range," Maya added, consulting her notes. "At least when the system isn't engaged." "What about when it is engaged?" "I can't test that because the machine shuts down the moment we try." Marcus wiped his face with his sleeve and stared at the harvester's control panel. Something was triggering the automatic shutdown. Something the system perceived as a critical failure, even if there wasn't one. "It's a safety cutoff," he said slowly. "The computer is detecting something it doesn't like and killing the power to protect the system." "But what's it detecting?" Tyler asked. "That's what we need to find out." Marcus spent another hour with the diagnostic computer pulling error codes and cross-referencing them with the technical manual Catherine had brought from the hacienda's files. The codes pointed to multiple possible causes: overload protection, thermal limits, pressure faults, but nothing definitive. "It's like the machine is seeing ghosts," Maya said, frustrated. "The readings say everything is fine, but the computer keeps shutting it down anyway." Marcus closed his eyes and thought. His father's voice echoed in his memory. "When the instruments tell you one thing and the machine tells you another, trust the machine. The instruments can only measure what they're designed to measure. The machine knows its own truth." "We're approaching this wrong," Marcus said suddenly. "We're looking at individual systems, but the problem isn't in any individual system. The problem is in how they're communicating with each other." "What do you mean?" Tyler asked. "The harvester's computer receives information from dozens of sensors. It uses that information to decide if it's safe to operate. If any sensor sends data that looks wrong, the computer assumes something dangerous is happening and shuts everything down. So one bad sensor could cause all of this. Not just one bad sensor, it could be a bad connection, a wire that's intermittently failing, a ground fault that only appears under certain conditions. Marcus grabbed his testing equipment. We need to check every sensor, every wire, every connection between the sensors and the main computer. All of them. That could take days, Maya said. We don't have days. We have 48 hours. Marcus looked at his two students. So we'd better get started. They worked through the afternoon and into the evening. Catherine brought food and water, but Marcus barely touched either. His entire focus was on the machine, on tracing the labyrinth of wires and connections that carried information from every corner of the harvester to its electronic brain. At 9 o'clock, with portable lights illuminating the work area, Maya made a discovery. Marcus, look at this. She was pointing to a bundle of wires that ran along the underside of the machine. One of them, a thin cable that connected a temperature sensor to the main harness, had been rubbed nearly raw by a bracket that had worked loose. The insulation is almost completely gone, Maya said. If the wire touches the bracket when the machine vibrates, it would create an intermittent ground fault, Marcus finished, the kind that wouldn't show up on a static test. But when the cutting system engages and everything starts moving, the vibration causes the wire to touch the bracket the fault triggers, and the computer sees corrupted data from the temperature sensor. It can't tell the difference between a bad reading and a genuine overheating problem, so it shuts everything down. Tyler's eyes went wide. That's it. All of this because of one loose bracket. One loose bracket and one worn wire. Sometimes the biggest problems have the smallest causes. Marcus was already reaching for his tools. Let's fix it. They repaired the damaged wire, secured the bracket, and reinforced the entire wiring harness to prevent future problems. By the time they finished, it was nearly midnight. We should test it, Maya said. Not in the dark. If something goes wrong, I want to be able to see what's happening. Marcus stretched his back, feeling every hour of the day in his muscles. We test at first light. Nobody slept well that night. Marcus lay in his bed, running through every step of the repair in his mind, wondering if he'd missed something, wondering if he'd been wrong. Lily had been asleep for hours when he finally drifted off, but she'd left a note on his pillow. I know you'll fix it, Daddy. You always do. He hoped she was right. At dawn, everyone gathered in the north field. Catherine stood with her arms wrapped around herself, trying to hide her anxiety. Walter paced back and forth near the harvester. Tyler and Maya positioned themselves where they could observe the machine from different angles. Marcus climbed into the cab and looked out at the faces watching him. So much was riding on what happened in the next few minutes. The harvest, the hacienda's finances, his reputation, his future. He thought about the day he'd walk down that dusty road with borrowed tools, hoping for a chance. Catherine had given him that chance. Now it was his turn to repay her trust. He turned the key. The engine started smoothly. Here we go, he muttered. He engaged the harvesting system. For one terrible second, nothing happened. The machine hummed. The systems initialized. And then the cutting mechanism roared to life. Tyler let out a shout of triumph. Maya covered her mouth with both hands, tears streaming down her face. Walter dropped to his knees in the dirt, overcome with relief. But Marcus didn't move. He kept the system running, monitoring every gauge, listening to every sound. 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute. Everything held steady. He ran the harvester forward, cutting through a row of corn. The machine performed flawlessly, just as it was designed to do. When he finally shut it down and climbed out of the cab, Catherine was waiting for him. Her eyes were red, and she made no effort to hide it. "You did it," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "We did it. Tyler and Maya found the problem. I just helped fix it." "Don't do that." She grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Don't minimize what you just accomplished. 5 certified technicians told me this machine couldn't be fixed without specialized equipment and factory parts. You fixed it with hand tools and determination. I fixed it because I had good help, and because you trusted me enough to let me try. Catherine stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something that shocked everyone present, including Marcus. She hugged him. "Thank you," she said quietly, her face pressed against his shoulder. "Thank you for saving my harvest. Thank you for saving my ranch. Thank you for everything." Marcus didn't know what to say, so he just held her. Around them, the workers celebrated. Tyler and Maya were comparing notes, already analyzing what they'd learned from the experience. Walter was on his phone calling the harvest crew to tell them they could resume operations immediately. But for that one moment, Marcus and Catherine simply stood together in the middle of a cornfield. Two people who'd learned to trust each other in the most difficult of circumstances. News of the repair spread fast. By the end of the week, Marcus had received calls from 3 other haciendas, all asking if he could look at equipment their regular mechanics couldn't fix. Word of mouth in farming communities was powerful. When someone solved an impossible problem, everyone heard about it. Catherine encouraged him to take the jobs. "Your skills shouldn't be limited to this ranch," she said during one of their morning meetings. "If you can help others while building your reputation, that benefits everyone. I don't want to neglect my responsibilities here." "You won't. Take Tyler and Maya with you. Consider it field training." So Marcus started accepting outside work on weekends, carefully selected jobs that presented interesting challenges, and allowed him to teach his students in real-world situations. The first call came from Roberto Sanchez, owner of the largest hacienda in the region. He had a hay baler that had defeated mechanics from 3 different cities. "I've heard you're some kind of miracle worker," Roberto said when Marcus arrived with his team. "I hope the rumors are true because this machine has been costing me money for 6 weeks. "I don't do miracles," Marcus replied. "I just do the work." The baler's problem turned out to be subtle, a cooling system issue that only manifested after extended operation. Most mechanics had tested the machine for 10 or 15 minutes, declared it functional, and left. The real problem only appeared after an hour of use, when the hydraulic oil heated up enough to change its viscosity. Marcus found it in 2 hours, fixed it in 3. Roberto Sanchez watched the repair with undisguised amazement. "How did you know to look there?" "The symptoms told me. The machine worked fine at first, then started having problems. That pattern points to something that changes with temperature. After that, it was just a matter of checking every heat-sensitive component until I found the culprit." The other mechanics said it was electrical, computer problems. The other mechanics tested a cold machine. They got cold machine readings. If you want to find a heat-related problem, you need to test under heat-related conditions. Roberto shook his head slowly. "Where did you learn to think like that?" "From my father, and from 20 years of fixing things that other people gave up on." As they drove back to San Miguel that evening, Maya broke the contemplative silence. "You know what I realized today? The difference between a good mechanic and a great one isn't knowledge, it's patience. The great mechanic takes the time to really understand what's happening instead of jumping to the obvious conclusion." "That's a lesson most people never learn," Marcus agreed, "in any field. I'm going to remember it. When I'm an engineer, I'm going to remember that the first answer isn't always the right answer." Tyler spoke up from the back seat. "That's what I like about working with you, Mr. Thompson. You make us think, not just follow instructions. Thinking is the only thing that matters. Instructions are just someone else's thinking written down. You need to be able to think for yourself because one day you'll face a problem nobody's ever written instructions for." Like that harvester. Exactly like that harvester. And the weeks that followed brought more jobs, more challenges, and more successes. Marcus's reputation grew throughout the region. Other haciendas began calling not just for repairs, but for advice on preventive maintenance programs. Some asked if he could train their workers the way he'd trained Tyler and Maya. Through it all, Marcus kept his primary commitment to San Miguel. He'd promised Catherine his loyalty, and that promise meant more to him than any amount of money or recognition. One evening, about a month after the harvester crisis, Catherine invited him to the main house for dinner, just the two of them. "I want to discuss something with you," she said as they sat down. "Something important." "Should I be worried?" She smiled slightly. "No. I hope you'll see this as a good thing." "Then I'm listening." Catherine folded her hands on the table. "Your reputation is growing. I'm proud of that. It reflects well on the hacienda, and it's recognition you've earned. But it's also creating an opportunity I hadn't anticipated." "What kind of opportunity?" "Other ranches want your services. Not just occasional repairs, but ongoing contracts, maintenance programs, training, the kind of comprehensive support you've built here at San Miguel." Marcus nodded slowly. "I've been getting those requests. I've turned most of them down because I don't have time to do them justice." "What if you did have time?" "I'm not sure I follow." Catherine leaned forward. "What if we expanded the operation? Created a formal technical services division within San Miguel. You would lead it. We'd hire additional mechanics people you could train and supervise. We could offer contracts to other haciendas throughout the region." Marcus stared at her. "You're talking about building a business. I'm talking about building on what you've already started. The skills you've developed, the methods you've created, the reputation you've earned, those have value beyond just this ranch. Why shouldn't we capture that value?" "I'm a mechanic, Catherine, not a businessman." "You're a leader. You've proven that with Tyler and Maya. With every repair that other mechanics couldn't handle. With every problem you've solved that everyone said was impossible." She held his gaze. "You have something rare, Marcus. Not just technical skill, but the ability to inspire others, to teach them, to make them better than they were." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, processing what she was proposing. A year ago, he'd been walking down a dusty road with borrowed tools, desperate for any chance at all. Now he was being offered the opportunity to build something he'd never dreamed possible. "What would this look like?" he finally asked. "Specifically, we'd convert the old equipment barn into a proper training facility, hire 3 or 4 mechanics people you'd select and train personally. Create service packages for different levels of support. Market our services to haciendas throughout Querétaro and neighboring states. That's a significant investment." "It is. But I've run the numbers, and I believe it would pay for itself within 2 years. After that, it becomes a profit center for the ranch. Additional revenue that doesn't depend on crop prices or weather conditions." Marcus thought about what this would mean. More responsibility, more complexity, but also more security for him, for Lily, for everyone who depended on the hacienda. "There's something you haven't mentioned," he said. "What's that?" "Where I fit in all this. Am I an employee building your business or something else?" Catherine held his gaze steadily. "I want to make you a partner. 20% ownership of the new division with the option to increase your stake as the business grows. You'd have a real investment in the success of what we build together." A partner. The word hung in the air between them. "You barely knew me 3 months ago," Marcus said. "Now you're offering me ownership in your family's hacienda." "I knew enough. I know more now." Catherine's voice softened. "You could have gone anywhere, Marcus. Once your reputation started growing, other places would have paid you more, offered you more. But you stayed. You kept your commitment to San Miguel even when it would have been easy to walk away. I gave you my word." "Exactly. And that matters more to me than any resume or reference." She reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "I'm asking you to build something with me. Something that could last. Something we could both be proud of." Marcus looked at her hand on his, then up at her face. He saw sincerity there. Trust. And maybe something else. Something neither of them was ready to name yet. "I'll need to think about it," he said. "Talk to Lily. This affects her too." "Of course. Take whatever time you need." That night, Marcus sat on his porch watching the stars appear over the hacienda. Lily was doing homework inside, occasionally poking her head out to make sure he was still there. A partner. An owner. A future he'd never imagined possible. When he'd walked down that dusty road 3 months ago, he'd been hoping for a job. A chance to prove he still had value. Instead, he'd found a home. A family of sorts. People who saw him for what he could do, not what he looked like. The next morning he told Catherine yes. The partnership agreement was signed 3 weeks later in Catherine's office with Walter and Mr. Henderson serving as witnesses. Marcus's hand trembled slightly as he put his name on the paper, not from doubt, but from the weight of what this moment represented. "Congratulations," Catherine said, extending her hand. "Partner?" Marcus shook it. "Partner." Mr. Henderson wiped his eyes with his sleeve, trying to hide his emotion. "Your father would be proud, Marcus. So damn proud." "I hope so, sir." "I know so. I worked with that man for 30 years. Stubbornness and integrity, that's what he gave you. Both of those things are in this room right now." The Technical Services Division of Hacienda San Miguel officially launched the following month. They converted the old equipment barn into a proper training facility, complete with diagnostic stations and a small classroom for theoretical instruction. Marcus hired 3 new mechanics men he'd interviewed, carefully testing not just their skills, but their willingness to learn and their respect for the work. Tyler was promoted to assistant supervisor. Maya, while still finishing her engineering degree, took on a part-time role developing training materials that combined academic theory with Marcus's practical methods. Samuel became the fleet maintenance lead responsible for keeping San Miguel's own vehicles running, while the team handled external contracts. Business came faster than Marcus had anticipated. Within 2 months, they had service agreements with 7 haciendas. Within 4 months, that number doubled. The reputation Marcus had built one successful repair at a time had created a demand he was struggling to meet. "We need more people," he told Catherine during one of their weekly planning meetings. "The contracts keep coming, and I don't want to sacrifice quality for volume." "Then hire more people." "It's not that simple. Finding mechanics with the right attitude is harder than finding mechanics with the right skills. I'd rather turn down work than put our reputation at risk with people who aren't ready." Catherine smiled. "That's exactly the kind of thinking that made me want you as a partner." Some people would call it bad business. Some people don't understand that reputation is everything, especially in communities like these where word travels fast and trust is earned over decades. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 4 months after the partnership began. Marcus was in the workshop reviewing a diagnostic report when his phone rang. The number wasn't familiar. "Marcus Thompson. Speaking." "Mr. Thompson, my name is Eduardo Mendoza. I'm the president of the Agricultural Producers Association of Querétaro. I wonder if you might have time to meet with me today." Marcus frowned. He'd heard of the association. It was one of the most influential agricultural organizations in central Mexico, representing hundreds of farms and cooperatives across the region. "May I ask what this is regarding?" "I'd prefer to discuss it in person, but I can tell you it involves both a significant challenge and a significant opportunity. For you specifically." "I'm listening." "Not over the phone, Mr. Thompson. Can you come to our offices in the city this afternoon? 3 o'clock. Marcus looked at his schedule. He had a service call at 2 and a training session at 4. Both could be rescheduled. "I'll be there." Catherine insisted on coming with him. "The association doesn't call individual mechanics for casual conversations," she said as they drove toward the city. "Whatever this is, it's big." "You know Mendoza." "By reputation. He's been running the association for almost 20 years. Very connected, very influential. If he's interested in you, it means someone important has been talking about what we're building." The association's offices occupied the top 2 floors of a modern building in Querétaro's financial district. Eduardo Mendoza met them personally in the lobby, a silver-haired man in his 60s, with the handshake of someone who'd spent a lifetime negotiating difficult deals. "Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Whitfield, thank you for coming on such short notice." "Your invitation was hard to refuse," Marcus said. "I intended it to be. Please come to my office. We have much to discuss." The office was impressive, without being ostentatious, the space of someone who valued substance over show. Mendoza gestured for them to sit, then settled behind his desk, and studied Marcus with an evaluating gaze. "I'll be direct with you, Mr. Thompson. Your reputation has reached my attention through several channels. The harvester repair at San Miguel. The baler at the Sanchez Hacienda. The efficiency improvements you've implemented across multiple operations. People are talking about you. I'm just doing my job. You're doing considerably more than that, which is why I have two matters to discuss with you today." Marcus glanced at Catherine. Her expression was carefully neutral, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. "The first matter is an emergency," Mendoza continued. "The Bajío Agricultural Cooperative, you may have heard of it, operates a grain processing center that serves over 200 small producers. Family farms. People who depend on that facility for their entire livelihood. I know the cooperative. Good people. Good people in serious trouble. Their main processing machinery broke down 3 weeks ago, right before peak season. They've brought in technicians from Mexico City, Monterrey, even specialists from the United States. Nobody has been able to identify the problem." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. This was exactly the kind of challenge he lived for, but also the kind that could destroy his reputation if he failed. What happens if the machinery isn't repaired? 200 families lose their harvest income for the entire year. Some of them will lose their farms. The ripple effects would devastate the regional economy. Mendoza leaned forward. "We're desperate, Mr. Thompson. I've exhausted every other option." "And the second matter?" Mendoza smiled slightly. "The second matter is contingent on the first. If you can solve the cooperative's problem, I'd like to offer you a position with the association. Technical Director of Maintenance and Innovation. You would oversee machinery maintenance for all our affiliated cooperatives, more than 50 operations across the region." Marcus stared at him. "That's a significant responsibility." "Significant responsibility with significant compensation. 75,000 pesos monthly, full benefits. A team of 15 technicians under your direction. The resources to implement the kind of preventive maintenance programs you've been developing at San Miguel." The number hit Marcus like a physical blow. 75,000 pesos. 5 times what he was currently making. Enough to secure Lily's future indefinitely. Enough to never worry about money again. That's... He paused, trying to gather his thoughts. "That's a generous offer. It's a recognition of your value. Good technical leadership is rare. Excellent technical leadership is almost impossible to find. I believe you represent the latter." Catherine spoke for the first time since they'd sat down. "You're asking him to leave San Miguel." "I'm asking him to expand his impact. What he's built at your hacienda is impressive, Mrs. Whitfield. But imagine what he could build with the resources of the entire association behind him." Marcus looked at Catherine. Her face was carefully controlled, but he knew her well enough now to read the emotion beneath the surface. She was trying to be supportive while her world was threatening to collapse. "I need time to think about this," Marcus said. "Of course, but the cooperative's situation is urgent. If you're willing to attempt the repair, we need you there within 48 hours. And if I fix the machinery but decline the position..." Mendoza's expression flickered with surprise. "That would be unexpected. But the repair is needed regardless of your decision about the position. The association would compensate you fairly for the work. I'll give you my answer about the repair by tomorrow morning. The position will require more consideration." "Fair enough." Mendoza stood and extended his hand. "I hope your answer is yes, Mr. Thompson. on both counts. The drive back to San Miguel was silent for the first 20 minutes. Marcus stared at the road, his mind churning through possibilities and implications. Beside him, Catherine gazed out the window, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Finally, she spoke. "You should take it." Marcus glanced at her. "What?" "The position, the 75,000 pesos." Her voice was steady, but there was a tremor beneath the words. "It's an incredible opportunity. The kind that doesn't come twice." "Catherine, I mean it, Marcus. What you've built at San Miguel is wonderful, but it's small. What Mendoza is offering, that's a chance to affect the entire region. Hundreds of farms, thousands of families. And what about our partnership? What about everything we've built together?" She turned to look at him directly. "I can find another mechanic. I can't ask you to sacrifice your future for loyalty to me." "You didn't ask. I'm choosing." "Marcus, listen to me." He pulled the truck over to the side of the road and turned off the engine. 18 months ago, I was walking down a dusty road with borrowed tools, hoping someone would give me a chance. You gave me that chance. Not because I had a fancy resume or important connections, because you saw something in me that nobody else would take the time to see. You earned everything you have. I just opened a door. You opened a door when every other door was slammed in my face. That means something to me. That will always mean something to me. Catherine's eyes glistened. "I don't want you to stay out of obligation." "It's not obligation. It's loyalty. There's a difference." Marcus took her hand, something he'd never done before outside of formal situations. "You trusted me when you had no reason to. You made me a partner when you could have kept me as an employee. You believed in what we could build together. I still believe in it. So do I. And I'm not going to abandon that belief for a bigger paycheck, no matter how big the number. But the cooperative is a different question. Those families need help. I can provide that help, but I can do it as a consultant from San Miguel, not as an employee of the association." Catherine frowned. "I'm not sure I understand. What if we approach this differently? I take the repair job work through San Miguel, not the association. We charge a fair rate for the work. If I succeed, we prove that our operation can handle regional scale challenges. We establish ourselves as a serious player, not just a local shop. And if you fail, then I fail having tried. But at least I'll have done it on my own terms with my integrity intact." Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Then she squeezed his hand. "You really want to stay." "I really want to stay. Even knowing what you're giving up." "I'm not giving anything up. I'm choosing what matters more." He met her eyes. "Money is just money. But the relationships you build, the trust you earn, the community you create, that's what lasts. That's what I want to be remembered for." For the first time since they'd left Mendoza's office, Catherine smiled. "Then let's call him back. Let's tell him San Miguel Technical Services is ready to take on the cooperative challenge." Marcus called Mendoza that night. "I'll attempt the repair," he said. "But I'm doing it as a representative of Hacienda San Miguel, not as a candidate for your position. Mrs. Whitfield's operation will provide the service, and any compensation should reflect that." There was a long pause on the line. "That's an unconventional approach." "I'm an unconventional person." Another pause. "And the position." "I'm honored by the offer, truly. But my place is at San Miguel. I've made commitments there that I intend to keep. Even at 5 times your current salary? Even then." Mendoza laughed softly, not mockingly, but with what sounded like genuine respect. "You're either the most principled man I've ever met, or the most foolish." "Probably both." "Very well, Mr. Thompson. We'll do this your way. I'll have the cooperative expect you tomorrow morning, and regardless of the outcome, I respect your decision." "Thank you, sir." One more thing. If you succeed, and I have a feeling you will, the association would be interested in a long-term service contract with San Miguel. We could use a partner who values integrity over profit. I'd be open to discussing that. Good. Good luck tomorrow. Marcus hung up and found Catherine watching him from the doorway of his workshop. "That was brave," she said. "That was terrifying. I just turned down more money than I've made in my entire life. And you don't regret it." Marcus thought about Lily asleep in their room, secure and happy for the first time since her mother died. He thought about Tyler and Maya growing into skilled professionals under his guidance. He thought about Walter and Samuel and all the others who'd become like family. Not for a second. The Bajío Cooperative's processing center was massive, a complex of interconnected buildings, covering several acres filled with machinery worth millions of pesos. Carmen Rodriguez, the cooperative's president, met Marcus at the entrance with an expression that mixed desperate hope with exhausted skepticism. "Mr. Thompson, thank you for coming." "Call me Marcus." "Marcus, then. I have to be honest with you. We've had so many experts come through here promising solutions. I've stopped getting my hopes up." "I'm not here to promise anything. I'm here to understand the problem and do my best to solve it." Carmen studied him for a moment. "That's the first honest answer I've gotten in 3 weeks. Come, I'll show you the machinery." The processing system was unlike anything Marcus had worked on before. Italian manufacturing, German electronics, American hydraulics, all integrated into a single complex operation. It was a technological marvel, and it was completely dead. "Walk me through what happened," Marcus said. "Everything was working fine until 3 weeks ago. One morning, we started the system like normal, and it ran for about 10 minutes before shutting down. Since then, we can get it to start, but it won't stay running long enough to process anything." "Have you noticed any patterns? Any specific conditions that seem to trigger the shutdown?" "Nothing consistent. Sometimes it runs for 10 minutes, sometimes 5, sometimes only 2. The technician said it could be anything from the main computer to the motors, but nobody could pinpoint the exact cause." Marcus spent the first day simply observing and documenting. He traced wiring diagrams, studied operational manuals, and interviewed every worker who regularly operated the system. Tyler and Maya had come with him, and he put them to work gathering data from every sensor and monitoring point they could access. "This is the most complex system we've ever worked on," Tyler said during a break. "Are you sure we can handle this?" "No," Marcus admitted. "But we're going to try anyway." "What if we fail?" "Then 200 families lose their income, and our reputation takes a serious hit." Marcus looked at his student directly. "But fear of failure isn't a reason not to try. It's just a reason to be thorough." The second day, Marcus began systematic testing. He isolated subsystems one by one, checking each component against its specifications, looking for any deviation that might explain the failures. By the end of the day, he'd found 3 separate issues, none of them catastrophic on their own, but together creating a cascade effect that overwhelmed the system's ability to compensate. "It's like a perfect storm," he explained to Carmen that evening. "You have a temperature sensor that's reading slightly high, a hydraulic filter that's partially clogged, and a timing discrepancy in the control software. Any one of these problems the system could handle. All 3 together, and the computer gets confused. It sees conflicting data and decides the safest thing to do is shut everything down." "Can you fix it?" "I can, but it's going to take time. I need to recalibrate the sensor, replace the filtration system, and adjust the software parameters. Maybe 12 hours of work, maybe more." "Do it, whatever it takes." Marcus worked through the night. Tyler and Maya rotated shifts, assisting when he needed hands and resting when he didn't. By dawn, his eyes were burning and his hands were cramped from hours of detailed work. But the repairs were complete. "We should test it," Maya said, barely able to keep her own eyes open. "Get everyone out here first. If this works, they deserve to see it. Word spread quickly through the cooperative. By the time Marcus was ready for the test, more than 50 people had gathered. Farmers, workers, family members, all watching with held breath as he prepared to start the system. Carmen stood beside him, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. "Whatever happens," she said quietly, "thank you for trying." Marcus nodded and pressed the start button. The machinery hummed to life. Conveyor belts began moving. Processing units activated in sequence. Monitoring screens filled with data streams showing normal operations across every subsystem. 1 minute passed, then 5, then 10. The system kept running. Marcus fed a test batch of grain through the processor. The machinery handled it flawlessly, sorting, cleaning, processing with the precision it had been designed for. 20 minutes, 30, an hour. Someone in the crowd started crying. Then someone started cheering. Within moments, the entire group was celebrating, people hugging each other, tears streaming down faces weathered by years of hard work and worry. Carmen grabbed Marcus's arm, her grip almost painful. "You did it," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "You actually did it." "The machine did it. I just reminded it how." 3 weeks, 6 technicians, hundreds of thousands of pesos in failed repairs. She shook her head in disbelief. "And you fixed it in 2 days." "I had good help." Marcus gestured toward Tyler and Maya, who were receiving their own congratulations from grateful workers. "And I had something the other technicians didn't have." "What's that?" "Time. They came in expecting to find a quick answer. I came in expecting to find a complicated problem. Sometimes the difference between success and failure is just how much patience you're willing to invest." Eduardo Mendoza arrived that afternoon with a delegation from the association. He surveyed the running machinery, listened to Carmen's account of the repair, and studied Marcus with an expression of undisguised admiration. "You've done something remarkable here," Mendoza said. "I did my job." "You did considerably more than that. And you did it while turning down an opportunity that most people would have seized without hesitation." Mendoza extended his hand. "I may not understand your choice, but I respect it enormously." "Thank you, sir." The association would like to formalize a service contract with San Miguel Technical Services, ongoing maintenance support for all our affiliated cooperatives. Your team, your methods, your terms. Marcus felt a surge of pride not for himself, but for everyone who'd helped build what San Miguel represented. "I'd like that very much. There's one more thing." Mendoza reached into his jacket and produced an envelope. "This is the repair fee we discussed, plus a bonus the cooperative insisted on adding. They wanted you to know how much this meant to them." Marcus accepted the envelope without opening it. Whatever was inside, he knew it would be more than fair. "Tell them it was my honor." The drive back to San Miguel felt different from the drive out, lighter somehow despite the exhaustion. Marcus watched the countryside roll past, thinking about everything that had happened in the past 2 days. He'd turned down 75,000 pesos a month. He'd taken on an impossible challenge. He'd succeeded against all odds. But more than any of that, he'd proven something to himself, something he'd been trying to prove ever since the day his wife died, and he'd promised to take care of their daughter. He wasn't just a mechanic. He wasn't just an employee. He was someone who could build things, create opportunities, change lives. Tyler broke the silence from the back seat. "Mr. Thompson, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "When Mendoza offered you that job, weren't you tempted, even a little?" Marcus smiled tiredly. "Of course I was tempted. 75,000 pesos is a lot of money. It would have solved a lot of problems. So why didn't you take it?" Marcus thought about how to answer. The truth was complicated, a mixture of loyalty, principle, and something harder to articulate. "Because some things matter more than money," he said finally. "The relationships you build, the promises you keep, the person you see when you look in the mirror. He glanced at Maya in the rearview mirror. My father taught me that. He said a man's worth isn't measured by what he earns. It's measured by what he stands for. I think your father was a smart man. He was. Smartest man I ever knew. Marcus turned his attention back to the road. And the best thing he ever taught me was that the easy choice and the right choice are rarely the same thing. When they arrived at San Miguel, Catherine was waiting at the workshop door. She'd clearly been watching for them. Well, she asked as Marcus climbed out of the truck. It's fixed. The cooperative is operational, and the association wants a long-term service contract. Catherine's face broke into a smile that transformed her entire appearance. Before Marcus could say anything else, she threw her arms around him in a hug that nearly knocked him off balance. I knew you could do it, she said against his shoulder. I knew it. Marcus held her too tired to be surprised by the intimacy of the moment. We did it, he corrected. All of us. Together. Together, she agreed. Behind them, Tyler and Maya exchanged knowing glances. Walter emerged from the workshop, took one look at the scene, and quietly retreated to give them privacy. And somewhere in the distance, the sun was setting over the fields of San Miguel. The same fields Marcus had first seen on a day when he'd had nothing but borrowed tools and desperate hope. Now he had so much more. A home, a purpose, a family of his own making, and the knowledge that he'd earned every bit of it. The months that followed the cooperative repair transformed everything Marcus had built into something larger than he'd ever imagined possible. The association contract brought steady work, but more importantly, it brought credibility. Other organizations began reaching out agricultural cooperatives from neighboring states. Equipment dealers looking for reliable service partners, even the Technical Institute, where Maya studied, asking if Marcus would consider teaching a practical workshop for their students. He said yes to the institute. How could he not? The opportunity to shape young minds to pass on what his father had taught him, and what he'd learned through decades of trial and error, that was worth more than any service contract. The first workshop session drew 23 students. By the third session, that number had doubled. Word spread through the student body that there was a mechanic from San Miguel who could explain complex systems in ways that actually made sense, who treated questions as opportunities rather than interruptions, who made the theoretical practical and the intimidating approachable. Maya stood at the back of the room during one of these sessions, watching Marcus demonstrate a diagnostic technique on a training engine. Afterward, she approached him with an expression he couldn't quite read. You know what's funny, she said. What's that? 6 months ago, I was frustrated with my professors because they couldn't teach me anything useful. Now I'm watching you teach a room full of students things my professors never even mentioned, and they're hanging on every word. Your professors know things I don't. Theory matters. Theory matters when it's connected to reality. You make that connection. They don't. Maya paused. I've been thinking about something. Tell me. When I graduate next year, I don't want to work for some big company in the city. I want to come back here, work with you full-time, help build what San Miguel is becoming. Marcus studied her face, looking for any sign of uncertainty. He found none. Your father would have to approve. He already has. I talked to him last week. He said, Maya's voice caught slightly. He said, watching me learn from you has been one of the proudest experiences of his life. He said you gave me something he never could. Walter's a good man, better than he gives himself credit for. He is. But you're a good man too, Marcus. Don't deflect when someone tries to tell you that. The expansion of San Miguel Technical Services required physical growth as well. The old equipment barn that had served as Marcus's first workshop was now too small for the operation they'd built. Catherine proposed converting an unused storage facility on the edge of the hacienda property, a larger space that could accommodate more equipment, more training stations, and more staff. Marcus walked through the empty building with her one afternoon, visualizing what it could become. We'd need to reinforce the electrical system, he said, pointing toward the ceiling. Install proper ventilation, Build out separate areas for diagnostics, repair work, and classroom instruction. How much? For everything, maybe 200,000 pesos. Could be more depending on what we find when we start construction. Catherine nodded slowly. It's a significant investment. It is. But the contracts we have now, plus the ones in negotiation, should cover it within 18 months. After that, everything is profit. You've run the numbers. 3 times. Maya helped. She's better with spreadsheets than I am. Catherine smiled. I remember when you told me you weren't a businessman. I'm still not, but I've learned that business is just problem solving with money attached. And problem solving is something I understand. They stood in silence for a moment, both looking at the empty space and imagining what it could become. There's something I've been wanting to say, Catherine said finally. Marcus turned to face her. Her expression was different from usual, softer, more vulnerable. When you first came to this hacienda, I was convinced you'd be like all the others. Talk big. Fail bigger, leave with my money and excuses. I was so certain I almost didn't give you a chance. But you did. I did. And that decision changed everything. Not just for the ranch, for me. She met his eyes directly. I was lonely, Marcus, for years. I'd convinced myself that running this place alone was enough, that I didn't need anyone. Then you arrived, and suddenly I had a partner. Someone who understood what it meant to build something. Someone who valued the same things I valued. Catherine, let me finish, please. She took a breath. A year ago, you walked down that road with nothing but borrowed tools and a daughter who believed in you. Now look at what you've built. Look at how many lives you've touched. Tyler has become someone his father would be proud of. Maya found direction she was searching for. The cooperative families still talk about the man who saved their harvest. Her voice softened. And Lily has a home, a real home. For the first time since her mother died. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. This place became a home because of you. Not me. Because of us. That's what I'm trying to say. Catherine reached out and took his hand. I don't know what this is between us. I don't know where it goes. But I know that I'm grateful every single day that you chose to stay. That you chose us over everything else you could have had. There was never really a choice, Marcus said quietly. Not once I understood what was here. And what is here? He looked at her, this woman, who had taken a chance on a stranger, who had seen past his circumstances to something deeper, who had become his partner in ways neither of them had anticipated. Family, he said. That's what's here. That's what you gave me. That's what I'm never going to leave. The 1-year anniversary of Marcus's arrival at San Miguel was marked with a celebration that surprised even him. Catherine had kept the planning secret, working with Walter and the others to organize something special without letting Marcus know. The party filled the main courtyard of the hacienda. Workers and their families, clients who had become friends, students from the institute who'd attended Marcus's workshops, Carmen Rodriguez from the cooperative who'd made the 3-hour drive specifically for the occasion. And at the center of it all, looking around with wide eyes and a heart full of emotion he couldn't quite contain, stood Marcus Thompson. Did you know about this? He asked Lily, who was grinning up at him with barely contained excitement. I helped plan it. Mrs. Catherine said it was important to keep it secret so you couldn't say no. I would never say no to a party. You would if it was about you. You don't like attention. She was right, of course. His daughter knew him better than anyone. Mr. Henderson made his way through the crowd, walking with the help of a cane, but moving with purpose. When he reached Marcus, he placed a weathered hand on his shoulder. 1 year, the old man said. 1 year since I made that phone call. Feels like longer. Feels like a lifetime. Henderson's eyes were bright with emotion. You know what I remember most about that day? The look on your face when you asked me why anyone would give you a chance. Like you couldn't believe good things could still happen. I couldn't. Not then. And now, Marcus looked around the courtyard. Tyler was teaching a group of children how to identify different types of wrenches. Maya was deep in conversation with Carmen, probably discussing technical improvements for the cooperative's machinery. Samuel was managing the food tables with the same methodical care he applied to maintenance schedules. Catherine stood near the main house watching the celebration with an expression of quiet satisfaction. And Lily, his beautiful, brilliant Lily, was running across the courtyard toward a group of friends, laughing with the pure joy of a child who finally felt secure in her world. "Now I believe," Marcus said. "Good." Henderson squeezed his shoulder. "Because your father believed in you before you were old enough to believe in yourself. He told me once said his boy was going to do something special, something that mattered. He didn't know what it would be, but he knew it would come. I wish he could see this. He can. Wherever he is, he can see exactly what his son has become." Henderson's voice cracked slightly. "And so can your wife. She's watching too. They both are." Marcus had to look away for a moment, blinking against the sudden moisture in his eyes. Later that evening, as the celebration continued around him, Marcus found himself standing alone at the edge of the courtyard. The noise of the party faded into a pleasant background hum as he let his thoughts wander. Catherine appeared beside him, 2 glasses in hand. "You're supposed to be celebrating, not hiding." "I'm not hiding. I'm processing." She handed him a glass. "Processing what?" "All of this. How much has changed? How impossible it would have seemed a year ago." He took a sip. "A year ago I had $47, a borrowed toolbox, a daughter I was terrified I'd fail. And now I have more than I know what to do with, a home, a business, people who depend on me." He turned to look at her. "You." Catherine's smile was gentle. "Me. I never expected that part. When I walked down that road, I was hoping for a job, maybe a chance to prove I wasn't worthless. I never expected to find—" He struggled for the right word. "This. What is this exactly? I don't know, but it feels like something I've been looking for my whole life without knowing I was looking for it." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the party continue. "You know what Lily told me last week," Catherine said eventually. "What?" "She said she wants to be a mechanic when she grows up, like her daddy." Marcus laughed softly. "I hope she changes her mind. She's smart enough to be anything: a doctor, an engineer, a scientist." "Maybe. But right now she wants to be like you. She wants to fix things that other people have given up on." Catherine's voice softened. "I think that's the highest compliment a daughter can give her father. I just want her to be happy." She is happy. Look at her. Lily was dancing with a group of other children, her face bright with joy, completely at ease in a way Marcus hadn't seen since before her mother died. "She's so much like Maria," he said quietly. "The same laugh, the same way of seeing good in everything." "Tell me about her, your wife." Marcus considered the question. He rarely talked about Maria. The memories were precious, and he'd kept them close like sacred things. "She was the strongest person I ever knew," he said finally. "When she got sick, the doctors gave her 6 months. She lasted 2 years, because she refused to leave until she was sure Lily would be okay without her. That must have been impossibly hard." "It was. But she made me promise something before she died. She made me promise I'd never let Lily see me give up, no matter how bad things got, no matter how hopeless everything seemed." His voice tightened. "Some days that promise was the only thing that kept me going." "You kept it. You're still keeping it." "I'm trying." He looked at Catherine directly. "But I need you to know something. This past year, everything that's happened, it wouldn't have been possible without you. You gave me a chance when you had every reason not to. You saw something in me that I'd stopped seeing in myself. I saw the truth. That's all. The truth wasn't obvious. Not back then. I was unemployed, desperate, carrying borrowed tools down a dirt road. Most people would have looked at me and seen a failure. I didn't see a failure. I saw someone who'd been failed by circumstances, by people who couldn't see past their own prejudices, by a world that judges too quickly and forgives too slowly. Catherine set down her glass and turned to face him fully. You weren't broken, Marcus. You were just waiting for someone to recognize what you were capable of. And you recognized it. I hoped. That's different from knowing. She smiled slightly. But sometimes hope is enough to start something that becomes much more. The party continued late into the night. People came and went. Conversations flowed, laughter filled the spaces between stories. At some point, someone produced a guitar and Mexican folk songs mixed with American country tunes in a musical fusion that somehow worked perfectly. Around midnight, when most of the families with young children had gone home, Marcus found himself sitting with Tyler, Maya, and Samuel at one of the courtyard tables. The younger generation and the foundation of everything he'd built. "Can I say something?" Tyler asked, his words slightly loose from the celebratory drinks. "You're going to anyway," Maya teased. "Shut up, this is serious." Tyler straightened in his chair and looked at Marcus. "When you first came here, I didn't think much of you. No offense." "None taken. I'd seen mechanics come and go. They were all the same, show up, charge money, leave things worse than they found them. I figured you'd be just another one." Tyler shook his head slowly. "But then you fixed that truck, and you explained how you did it. You actually talked to us like we mattered, like our questions were worth answering." They were worth answering. That's the thing, nobody else thought so. To everyone else, we were just workers. Hands, muscle. But you saw more. You saw that we could learn, that we could become something better. Tyler's voice cracked. "My father never got to teach me what he knew. He died before I was old enough to understand. But in this past year, you've taught me everything he would have. Everything I missed out on. And I don't have the words to say how much that means." Maya reached over and squeezed Tyler's hand. Samuel cleared his throat. "I'm 53 years old. I've been working around machines my whole life without understanding them. They were just big, loud things that sometimes worked and sometimes didn't. Then Marcus came and showed me they were actually logical, predictable, that there were reasons for everything they did." He looked at Marcus with something like awe. "You gave me knowledge I never thought I'd have. At my age, most people stop learning. You made me start again." "You were always capable," Marcus said. "You just needed someone to show you how." "Maybe, but you were the one who showed me, and I'll never forget that." Maya was last to speak. "My father said something to me last week. He said before you came he was worried about my future. I was studying engineering, but I seemed lost, disconnected, like I was going through the motions without understanding why. You seemed pretty focused to me." "That's because you saw me after you'd already changed everything." Maya's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You showed me that engineering isn't just formulas and theories. It's about understanding how things work, why they matter, how to make them better. You made me fall in love with my profession in a way my professors never could. Your professors gave you the foundation. You gave me the purpose." She wiped her eyes quickly. "And next year when I graduate, I'm coming back here, to work with you, to build on everything you've started. Not because I have to, but because there's nowhere else I'd rather be." Marcus looked at the three faces around the table, these people who had started as strangers and become something far more precious. He thought about his father, who had worked his whole life without recognition. He thought about Maria, who had dreamed of a future she never got to see. He thought about all the doors that had been slammed in his face, all the people who had looked at him and seen nothing worth remembering. And he thought about how wrong they had all been. "You know what my father used to say?" Marcus asked quietly. "He said a man's legacy isn't the money he leaves behind. It's the people he lifts up along the way." "I like that," Tyler said. "I didn't understand it when I was young. I thought success meant having things. A good job, a nice house, respect from important people. Marcus shook his head. But none of that matters. Not really. What matters is whether you made things better for the people around you. Whether you left the world a little brighter than you found it. You've done that, Maya said. You're still doing it. We're all doing it. Together. That's the point. Marcus raised his glass. To the people who lift each other up. They clinked their glasses together under the stars. The night eventually wound down. The last guests departed. The courtyard emptied. Marcus helped with the cleanup, working alongside Walter and the others until the space was restored to its usual order. When everything was done, he walked Lily back to their quarters. She was half asleep on her feet, exhausted from the excitement of the evening. "Did you have a good time, baby girl?" "The best time," she murmured. "Everyone was so happy. Because of you. Because of all of us. Mostly because of you." She yawned hugely. "Daddy." "Yes. I'm glad we came here. I'm glad you fixed that truck. I'm glad we stayed." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." He tucked her into bed and kissed her forehead. She was asleep before he reached the door. Outside the hacienda was quiet. Marcus stood on the small porch of their quarters and looked out over the property that had become his home. The workshop where he'd built a business. The fields where he'd saved a harvest. The main house where a woman had taken a chance on a stranger and changed both their lives. Catherine appeared on the path, walking slowly toward him. She stopped a few feet away, her face illuminated by the soft light from the windows. "I wanted to say good night," she said. "Good night. And thank you for this past year, for everything you've given this place. You already thanked me, several times tonight. I know, but some things are worth repeating." She took a step closer. "I never told you this, but after my husband died, I stopped believing in possibilities. I managed the ranch because I had to, not because I wanted to. I went through the motions of living without actually being alive. And now I wake up every morning actually looking forward to the day. Now I have a partner I trust. Now I have a future that feels like more than just survival." She reached out and took his hand. "You gave me that. Whether you meant to or not, you gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever." Marcus didn't have words for what he felt, so he simply held her hand in the quiet darkness. Two people who had found each other against all odds. "Lily asked me something the other day," Catherine said eventually. "She asked if you and I were going to get married." Marcus felt his heart skip. "What did you tell her?" "I told her I didn't know, that some things take time to figure out." Catherine's voice was soft but steady. "Was that the wrong answer?" "I think it was an honest one, but not the final one." Marcus looked at this woman who had become so essential to his life. He thought about everything they'd built together, everything they might still build. "No," he said quietly. "Not the final one." Catherine smiled a real smile full of hope and possibility. "Then I can wait for the right answer, however long it takes." She squeezed his hand once, then turned and walked back toward the main house. Marcus watched her go, feeling something shift in his chest, something that felt like the beginning of a new chapter. He stayed on the porch for a long time after that, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead, thinking about the journey that had brought him here, the dusty road, the borrowed tools, the $47 and the promise to a dying wife. 1 year ago, he had been a man with nothing but his skills and his stubbornness. A man who'd been mocked, dismissed, written off as worthless. Now he was something else entirely. A business owner, a mentor, a partner. A man who had proven that excellence could come from anywhere, that integrity mattered more than credentials, that the people others dismissed were often the ones who made the biggest difference. His father had been right. Legacy wasn't about money. It was about the lives you touched, the people you lifted up, the mark you left on the world. And Marcus Thompson was just getting started. Inside the house, Lily shifted in her sleep, dreaming whatever dreams come to children who finally feel safe. In the workshop, the tools Marcus had earned through months of hard work waited for morning. Across the hacienda, the people whose lives he'd changed were sleeping peacefully secure in the knowledge that someone believed in them. And somewhere in the vast darkness of the universe, two spirits who loved him, his father and his wife, watched over everything he'd built with pride that transcended death itself. Marcus Thompson had walked down a dusty road with nothing but hope and borrowed tools. He had been mocked for being unemployed, dismissed for the color of his skin, written off as worthless by people who never bothered to look beneath the surface. But he had never stopped believing that he had value. He had never stopped fighting for his daughter, for his dignity, for the chance to prove what he was capable of. And in the end, that belief, that stubborn, unshakable belief, had changed everything. Not just for him, for everyone who had the privilege of knowing him. That was the true measure of a man's worth. Not what he achieved for himself, but what he made possible for others. Marcus Thompson understood that now. He had lived it. And he would spend the rest of his life proving it one repaired machine at a time, one trained apprentice at a time, one impossible problem at a time. Because that was who he was. A mechanic who could fix what others had given up on. A father who kept his promises. A man who turned mockery into legacy. And nothing, not prejudice, not poverty, not the weight of a world that had tried to break him, would ever take that away.